Morning, morning. uh, Thank you so much for the incredible intro. I was blushing listening to that. I overcame a lot in my life, but overcoming jet lag is something that I'm not. It's really hitting me in the face. But here we are. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for the incredible invite. When I got the email, I thought it was a scam, and then but here we are in Bangkok, 33 degrees, I think. I came from -2 London, which is very bleak, I know. It's worse than war. Um, um, so my name is Hassan. I think um, um, uh, I'll tell you how this is going to work, right? So I am going to speak about my story. I'm going to speak about my work and what I do, and I am going to give a little bit more focus and attention to storytelling, filmmaking, what I do, and especially impactful filmmaking. How can we tell stories with impact? And then I'll let you do with it whatever you want, right? So you take it and do whatever you want with the story. And then we're going to have a Q&A. And when we get to the Q&A, I would urge you to please ask me any question. Don't be shy. I love it when people challenge me. I love when people ask me like difficult questions, like why are you bold? Um, it's my genes. But yes, ask anything when we get to that, right? Is that okay? Sounds good? Perfect, great. Well, my name is Hassan. That is, we've established that. I'm from Syria, from Damascus. Is there anyone here who is from Syria? Oh, Assalamu alaikum. Right, just one person. We are a minority everywhere. And I am 35 years old. I was born in 1988. It was a great year. I was born in Saudi, actually. I don't know if anyone from Saudi? No? Okay. All right, so I was born in Saudi, moved back home to Syria, Damascus. And I know that in my intro it said that Hassan's sort of like early memories of Syria were days of conflict and displacement, which is true, but before that, there were normal days in Syria. There were happy days in Syria, like days when my friends and I used to go to and smuggle ourselves into gigs so we can party. It was the happy days. There were days of us going on road trips to Lebanon so we could go to McDonald's, because there was no McDonald's in Syria. So to get a Big Mac, we had to drive for 5 hours to Beirut, which was great fun. There were days of community. There were days of family. There were days of incredible Seyran. Seyran is a picnic. What happens in Seyran? I'll tell you what happens. All Syrians go to the countryside, and everyone is a barbecue master. And then you just see all this smoke. It's not bombs, it's just meat. It's people grilling meat. Days of fun and dancing and great food and just people getting by and having a great time. And in Syria, pre-2011, there were so many crises that were happening in our region. There was the Anglo-American invasion of Iraq in the 2000s, when Iraq was illegally invaded, and as a result, nearly a million Iraqis came to Syria. There was the 2006 war in Lebanon between Hezbollah and Israel, where as a result also tens of thousands of Lebanese people came to Syria to seek just to stay and be safe. Syria had refugees from Armenia, from Greece. We have nearly over 1 million Palestinians since the Nakba in 1948. Syria was always a haven for people who were fleeing their war-torn countries, and Syrians themselves sort of provided, opened their arms, and everyone was welcome. I think it's always incredible to be honest, and I will have to say that, especially when during the war in Iraq, and we had quite a lot of Iraqis, nearly 1 million people coming to Syria. I had questions. I said, "Oh my, we're being overrun by Iraqis." I was maybe 16 or 17, and I lacked the education to sort of know better. I said, it's too many people. We're full up, and I'm being very honest, and there's no shame in being honest. I had questions. I was a bit ignorant, and it's important to highlight that people are afraid of what they don't understand. And I didn't understand why people are leaving their countries until it happened to me. Method research, method learning, learn by experience. But I think what I would like to tell you, I want to give you a bit of context on what actually happened in Syria, because it's important to know. It's one of the biggest crises in modern history, and there's a lot of misinformation around this conflict, like any other conflict. There's a lot of conspiracy. There's a lot of, delusions and lies. But what happened in Syria is quite simply is this not working? I'm so sorry. Is this better? Great. Should I start over now? Okay, no. Okay, great. Okay. Is this better? All right. I'm so sorry, guys. I wasn't aware. It's all good? All right. I'm going to carry on. So what happened in Syria was a continuation of the Arab Spring. And if you're aware, in Tunisia, the Arab Spring started, that waved through Libya and Egypt, and then to Syria, where people went on the street demanding freedom, peace, democracy, rights, basic rights. I'll tell you before that what was not allowed in Syria. It wasn't allowed to open a falafel shop without the permission of the secret police. I know, it's mad. It's not allowed to have a wedding without a permission of the secret police. You need to have permission from the government for everything. If you say the wrong thing, or if you make a joke about the governing body, you end up in prison. That was a fact. That happened. Because in dictatorships, this is what happens. In authoritarian countries, people aren't allowed to have their basic rights, the most simple of rights. So I didn't know about any of that, and I frankly didn't care, because I was teaching, I was having a great time, I was making quite a lot of money, I was privileged, I was the 1%, I didn't really care. I didn't, why would I? I had everything. But I think what sort of triggered something in me was when 7 students in a city south of Syria called Dara, they scribbled on the walls of their school, "الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام," which means people want the downfall of their regime, and it's the slogan of the Arab Spring. So they just wrote, 7-year-olds, they wrote it on their walls. It's childish naivete, sort of like they hear it on the news and then they wrote it. What happened to these kids was that they were arrested by the police, they were tortured, their fingernails were removed, and then when their parents went to demand their release, they were told, go and have other children, and if you can't, send your wives and we will bring you children. So that started it. That was the spark that started the Syrian uprising. And to me, as a teacher who was teaching kids that age, I was like, this is a bit fucked up. It's mad. You can do things and you can sort of like be savage and all of that. But that is on another level, right? I think damaging any civilian is wrong. But children, the age of 6 and 7, is on another level of savagery. So the streets of streets of Syria, people were on the streets demanding for just to end that savagery. So what happens, again, we have established that we are in an authoritarian country, in a dictatorship. What happens when people protest? Well, it's what happens is quite awful, because the reaction is more violence. Because when you are, I'll tell you the psyche of anyone who is like an absolute sort of like leader, is that this is my country and I'm not going to allow anyone to take that from me. So I am going to teach them, I'm going to teach them how to behave. So as a result, any peaceful protests that erupted, the protesters were shot at using AK-47s, and they were arrested and they were tortured. That happened throughout Syria in 2011 up until late 2012. 2 years of peaceful uprising. Not a single gun, just people saying freedom. And I foolishly happened to be one of them. I mean, it was a decision that sort of changed my life. But I'll tell you what I did, why I did it. I think when we are about to embark on something huge in our lives, I don't know about you, but this is how I feel. I tend to sort of check my privilege. I'm like, what do I have that I can utilize to assist in that matter? And what I had was good command of English and knowing how to operate a camera. Really, really useful when you want to document something so you can show the world what's happening. So that's what I did. I went to the protests and I just held my phone like this and I was just filming protests. And I'm, putting them online for the world to see what's happening. Because in every conflict, you know what's the first casualty? It's always the truth. It's always the truth. That is the first casualty. And in every conflict, there is a war on rhetoric. There are fact twisters. There are people trying to change what the facts are. So there were two arguments here. The regime's argument, the Syrian regime's argument, was that Syrian protesters are terrorists. And our argument was, actually, we're not. We are just simple people who want change. They had, access to TV, and imagine in one of the protests in the news, they said, oh, this wasn't a protest. This was a group of people thanking God for the blessings of rain. That was literally what they said. There was just a group of Syrians saying, thank you, God, for the rain. They were not protesting. I'm like, that's a bit much. It's quite mad. No one does that. And maybe, yeah, but you don't go on a protest, thank you, God, for the rain. No. So we had to sort of like, everyone who was part of the uprising, we had to, provide the alternative, tell the world what's actually happening on the ground. So I did that, and I was speaking on Facebook. Facebook was still in fashion before it died. Facebook now is only about funerals and weddings. It's so boring. But Facebook was quite big back then. And you know what people did? They started fake accounts, fake names. Because if you are posting under your name, they're going to be coming knocking on your door and taking you. And there was always this fear when they take someone. Oh my God, they took him or her or them. And we don't know. I mean, it's scary. So I was posting under a fake name. And I was going on protests and filming these protests and putting them online. And I was doing my part. And I was teaching at my school. And I was telling the kids about what's going on. I can't do more than that. Until one unfortunate day when I basically got arrested at a protest. And I spent my gap year in prison. When you spend your gap year traveling around Southeast Asia? Yeah, I didn't have that experience. I was in detention, and I'm not going to get into too many details because they are bleak, but basically I walked in as a normal person and I walked out with broken arms and broken legs and smashed ribs, and I lost 14 kilos, which was a great diet. I call it the prison diet. Yes, I was both of my wrists were broken. I had my leg nearly amputated. And again, my crime was protesting. That's literally all I did. So when that happens, when you're 22, I was 22. How old are you guys here? 7, 18, 19, 21? Anyone 22? Oh, quite a lot of 22s. Yeah, it's not the one to happen on 22. You know, it's 22. It's quite fun. 22. It's not fun to be in prison being beaten up, but it happened, you know, and it's sort of like, I'll tell you something about the impact of that, because it's important to know the impact on there's the physical impact, there are the scars, which I have a collection of, but there are what the scars dig under them. There are mental scars. There's quite a lot of mental scars and PTSDs and all of that, and trauma. It's not the one. It's pretty bleak. So I was very angry. I was an angry 22-year-old. I was very angry and upset, and I was upset at the state of the world. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna, I'm just, you know, people were like, you have to leave, you have to leave. I said, no, I'm staying. I'm not leaving my country. This is the only home I know. And then I stayed, and I got arrested again, another protest, and the same thing happened. But the second time, they put me in something which I think the worst thing that humans could create. And it's called solitary confinement. Whoever came up with the concept of solitary confinement is a strange person. Because a solitary confinement, just to explain to you, it's a 2-meter square cell. So it's basically around this size, from here to here. And that sort of like with no window. It's a hole in the ground. And that also is pretty bleak. And I was 22, remember. So I spent 2 weeks in that cell. And then when I left, someone offered me an opportunity to meet the president, Bashar al-Assad. They said, he heard your story and he would like to meet you. And I was like, oh my God, I am definitely going to meet him. And I was this naive 22-year-old who thought, you know what, I'm going to go and change his mind. I'm going to sit with the president and I'm going to make him, I'm going to be the hero that people will talk about for generations. Little did I know that that's not going to happen. But anyways, I went to the palace, and it's the palace of the president. No one goes there. You know, again, it's like Saddam Hussein, you know, it's like Muammar Gaddafi, like big characters. We went there, and I met the president. And if he ever watches this, I don't know if he will remember me. But I was there, and I was sitting with him, and I said, listen, I have one thing to tell you. And we were sitting in his palace. I said, you are making your own enemies. And you're making your own enemies. Why? Because when people protest, the reaction is not to torture them, it's to talk to them. Because conversation, talking, these are very useful. What we're doing here is very useful. It's talking. It's learning. It's being under one roof. And I told him, I said, you are making your own enemies. And these people will go on they're not going to peacefully protest anymore. They will carry weapons. And it's exactly what happened in Syria. Because after that, the peaceful uprising became a civil war where the protesters became rebels. And why did they become rebels? If you think about it, I know, listen, there are people who think and they believe in peaceful movements, and I am with that. But when your house is being bombed and your family is being killed and your entire town is being obliterated, they used barrel bombs. A barrel bomb is a terrible, terrible weapon. Why? Because it's literally a barrel full of explosions and shrapnels. And it has no precision whatsoever. They just drop it from a helicopter. They dropped 80,000 barrel bombs, obliterating towns and cities. They used besiegement. Besiegement, a town called Daraya. Daraya, it's in the countryside of Damascus. They besieged people there for 3 years. People had to eat their cats and the leaves of the trees. That's what they did. As a result, 24 million population pre-war Syria, 500,000 have died, if not more. 5 million are internally displaced, IDPs. 7 million refugees abroad. Society collapsed. Syria as a state has collapsed. It is currently being run by warlords and drug lords, and economically, the economy has completely collapsed. Inflation is out of the roof. And sadly, the Syria that I know pre-2011 is no longer there. And it breaks my heart to lose your home. Losing your home is the worst thing that could ever happen to you. And I genuinely pray that it could never happen to any of you. So, it's a pretty bleak start of the day, isn't it? I'm sorry about that. I wish I had a funner story to tell you. But I wanted to tell you that because I wanted to tell you what pushed me to leave. And it's something that I didn't understand when Iraqis came to Syria. And it's something that not a lot of the people around the world understand, to be honest, because the anti-refugee and anti-migrant rhetoric is on the rise, especially in Europe. You know, fascist movements, right-wing governments, people sort of saying refugees are a burden on the society. They're saying it's mostly young men, fighting age young men. This is the term that they use, especially in the UK. They say these are scoundrels, they're coming to steal our jobs and our benefits, and it's not true. It's simply not true. And I think all of that is sort of like, it's a politics of fear that they use to get people to vote in a certain way. Because fear is the strongest emotion, always. So I left Syria, and I did a tour in where my passport can take me. Because a Syrian passport is one of the worst passports in the world. It's pretty shit. Sorry, I keep swearing. I'm not supposed to swear. But it's the UN. I'm so sorry. I hope I don't get cancelled. Passports are annoying, aren't they? It's their first form of inequality, I think. Because the Syrian passport, it could only take you to the toilet without a visa, literally. It's pretty bad. And my passport can take me to Lebanon and Egypt and Turkey, and that's where I could go. You know, I stayed in the region. So I've stayed in Egypt, stayed in Lebanon, stayed in Turkey. And I was, in my head, I said, I'm going to go back to Syria. You know, I'm just going to wait until it gets better. And that was 2012, 2013, and 14. I'm just going to wait. And that's what Syrians did, actually. They stayed in the region. They didn't go anywhere else. They just stayed, just waiting for it to get better. Because, you know, people had hope. It will be better. And that hope was vanished. That hope was gone in 2015. And you know why? It's because that's when Putin decided to get involved in Syria. And that's when the Russian army decided to get involved. And Russia sent its troops and its airplanes and its soldiers, and they finished the job for Bashar al-Assad. Syria plus Iran plus Lebanese militias and Iraqi militias came in and assisted the regime, assisted the government in finishing the job. And that's when Syrians lost any hope of going back. Because, quite frankly, Assad regained control of the country with the help of the Russian soldiers and the Iranian soldiers and the Iraqi militias. So then a decision had to be made on where to go. And I'll tell you what, I was 27 back then. 27 is a great age. 27 is when you sort of like have enough money to go to nice restaurants. Right? No? It is. 27 is a great age because, you know, you're sort of like adult, but you're also still cool. Well, I think so. I genuinely, wait, 27, you're going to love 27. It's a fantastic age. But my 27 was me going around Turkey, finding a smuggler to get me to Greece. Because that route, I don't know if you know enough about, I sound so condescending, sorry. I know you know, but the European refugee crisis in 2016 was a big crisis because 1 year, over 1 million people arrived into Europe, and Europe freaked out. I was one of those people. And the first leg of the journey was getting on a boat from Turkey to Greece, on a rubber boat, a dinghy, what they call a dinghy. And I paid my ticket, You know, if I had a better passport, you know how much it costs to get from Turkey to Greece on a ferry? Guess. 20 euros. If you have a good passport. If you have a not very good passport like mine, it cost me $1,200 to be on a rubber boat with 60 people, which sank. I know, it's pretty bleak. It's okay to laugh, by the way. I tend to make fun of my story because I think comedy is great. You know, I think it's good to have fun, to be facetious sometimes. So we got on a boat, 62 of us sank. The next day we get on another boat and we get attacked by the Greek coast guards mid-water in the Aegean Sea, which is an international crime, by the way. It's against international law to attack refugees and asylum seekers. It's against international law. And the EU coast guards, in 2015, they attacked us in the water. We were 40 people on a boat. They came in on an army boat, and they literally beat us on a boat, and they destroyed the engine of our boat, and they left us in the water. We had to swim for 7 hours and push the boat until we got to Lesbos in Greece. Pretty horrible crossing. And from there, I went to Athens, and then I walked to Macedonia, and then from there I walked into Serbia, and then I had to deal with the Serbian mafia to smuggle me into Hungary to Vienna. And the Serbian mafia guys, they're pretty tough. Our smuggler was called Marco, and Marco was the size of a fridge. He's a pretty big guy, which we had to deal with, and he charged us 1,300 euros each to smuggle us through Hungary to Vienna. From Vienna, we boarded a train to Germany. And that's where I was leading a group of 20 people. That's where most people wanted to end up. They ended up in Germany. And then I continued west. I went into Belgium. And then from Belgium, I went into France. Calais, northern France. Anyone from France here? No. It's okay. Oh, just one. Bonjour. So I was in, that's about it. So I was in Calais in northern France. You know where that is, right? Imagine if you didn't. It would be, it'd be embarrassing. So I was in Calais in northern France in a camp which the Sudanese, anyone from Sudan? Amazing. Salaam alaikum. So the Sudanese people call this camp jungle, which is jungle, but they call it jungle in Arabic. And I was there in that camp for 2 months trying to get into lorries, into trucks, so I can smuggle myself into England. And I was in almost 50 trucks, trying every day, and it wasn't working. One time I was in a truck full of marshmallows, genuinely. And we were in that truck for 18 hours. And we always promised ourselves it was rude to open any boxes because haram, you know, you don't want to damage the driver. But on that day, we had to eat some marshmallows. And so we ate some marshmallows. And then everyone made it. All my friends made it, and then I was stuck. And then on Facebook, good old Facebook again, I find a guy whose job is to make you fake passports. He's based in Athens. He said, yes, no problem. Just send me pictures. I send you passport. Sure. I send him pictures, and I send him 4,000 euros, and he does actually send me a passport, a Czech passport. My name was Feredo Nestorova on the passport. This is all a true story, by the way. I go to Charles de Gaulle in Paris, the airport. You should probably know that as well. And from there, I get on a flight to go to London, but I get arrested because I was flying on a fake passport. They put me in detention in France. I leave. I call the smuggler. I said, brother, you need to send me another passport. He's like, okay, no problem. He sends me another passport. I was Serbian. My name was Tresho Anatoliev Trajanov. Genuinely, I had to memorize it. I go to Brussels because Paris was, no, they made me sign a warning letter. They're like, you can't fly with fake passports. I mean, what are you doing? Read the room. So I go to Brussels and I fly on that fake passport and it works. The flight takes off after 87 days of going through Europe. The best Euro trip ever. 87 days just trekking around Europe. The plane takes off. We land in Heathrow and they say, welcome to London. And that was the best thing I've ever heard in my life. It's great. I wanted to go to England. Why? When you make a decision on where to go, to be honest, factors that people have are language. I could speak English already, so it will be easier for me to integrate. It will be easier for me to rebuild my life. I hit rock bottom. 27, I had nothing. So I need to restart. So I speak English already, so I'm going to do that. And also, community. Where's the people that I know? I knew a few people in England, in London. So that's why I wanted to go there. And it cost me $7,000 the entire journey. My savings, all my savings, basically. It should have costed me $500. I should have been given a humanitarian visa. That's what should have happened. I should have been allowed to board the flight and land in London because I'm fleeing war and torture. I meet the criteria of leave to remain. The threshold of relief to remain, I go over that threshold. But that is the problem. The problem that there are no regular and safe routes to seek asylum around the world. There is a UN resettlement scheme, yes, that is true. There are schemes, but the schemes cannot deal with the scale of the crisis. Climate collapse, wars, devastation, all around the world. And the numbers are going up and up and up, and we need to find a better scheme to deal with it. Because the industry of people smuggling, of human trafficking, is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Money going into the wrong pockets. So there should be a solution, and the solution is safe and regular routes for people to claim asylum. I'm aware that I'm speaking a lot maybe, and you're already bored. And I'm not going to get into too many details, but I wanted to tell you about the final chapter of my life, which is in England. Not in my life, I'm still alive. But the final chapter of the story, which is London, England. So I land in Heathrow, and you're probably saying, what happens next when you fly on a fake passport? Because I had to destroy that passport on the plane. You know why? It's something that I actually also learned on Facebook. Facebook was useful back then. But they say if you fly on a fake passport, you have to destroy it, because otherwise you'll end up in prison. So I did that, and I washed up in Heathrow. I was in Heathrow, literally in my shorts and my T-shirt that I was wearing from Greece for 3 months. And I smelled I smelled pretty badly. I had nothing on me. And I am at arrivals in Heathrow. And when the border control officers? So I reach the officer and I say, that just there, you have to say, legally, you have to say just one sentence, that I would like to claim asylum. That's all you have to say. Nothing special, just I would like to claim asylum. But I couldn't say it. And I was just standing there frozen. And he looks at me and he's like, you okay? And I was like, yeah. And he says, what's a passport? I said, I don't have a passport. He said, ID? I said, I don't have an ID. And then I said, well, I'm Syrian, and I flew on a fake Bulgarian passport, and I would like to claim asylum. And then he was like, okay, great. Thanks for letting me know. So he did that, and that's it. That's all I had to say. And then I was taken in, I was fingerprinted, pictures were taken, because I could be anywhere. I could be anyone, sorry. I have nothing to prove my identity. Nothing. I could be Zinedine Zidane. It was very, very, very probable. I was questioned, and then I was released. And then 4 months later, I was invited for another interview where I was also questioned and assessed. And then 6 months later, they gave me my leave to remain. It's a very strange name. Is it leave or is it remain? It's it's a leave to remain. So it's a 5-year residency. And I was like, great, I can stay here. Finally, I can stay for the next 5 years. So I got that. And then after 5 years, I was given indefinite leave to remain, which is an indefinite residency. And then a year after that, which was last year, I was given my British citizenship. Yeah. Thank you very much. So now I have a very good passport. Now I look at people with Syrian passports and I'm like, oh, losers. I'm joking. I don't do that. It will be rude. Um, so yeah, I was an English teacher in Syria, so it was a bit of a problem because I'm not going to teach English to the English. It's a bit. It wasn't going to work. So I have decided to transition with my work. And you see all that journey that I told you about, all of that journey, that escapade? I filmed it all. I bought a GoPro camera. Remember GoPros, the action cameras? I bought one and I was filming the whole journey, all of it. Everything, on the boat, in the vans, in the plane with the fake passport, in the tent, everything. Literally vlogging my way into Britain. But why, you might ask me, why did you want to do that? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the news that was coming from England and Europe back then was horrible. Again, there was literally an opinion piece in a tabloid called The Sun in England. And The Sun is like a rag, I'm trying to find not a swear word to describe The Sun. But The Sun, yeah, it's a rag. It's nothing. But there was an opinion piece in The Sun saying we should send army boats to shoot down these boats of refugees. There were people saying, oh, how come these Syrians have smartphones if they're refugees? How come they have smartphones? How come some of them have designer clothes? There were people saying, these are fighting age men some were saying these are coming here to establish the Sharia law in England. It's mad what was being said, mad. So I wanted, again, to do what I did in Syria. I wanted to provide I wanted to tell people what it's actually like. I wanted people to walk in my footsteps because I believe that, storytelling, I believe that sharing it always works. It helps understanding. And I had access. If anyone here decides to study filmmaking, especially documentary filmmaking, or get into filmmaking, the most important thing in documentary filmmaking is what? Access. Having access. And I had incredible access. I was with Marco the Fridge, the smuggler, remember? I was on a boat. So I filmed it all and I made a documentary film about it called Exodus, Our Journey to Europe. It was on the BBC and PBS Frontline in America and the United States. And it won an Emmy and a BAFTA and all these awards. And I was going to awards ceremony literally a year after arriving in England, giving acceptance speeches. And it was all very surreal. Like, what's going on? It's crazy, that is not normal. So I did all of that. And then I decided that I want to continue to make more films because I love making films. And I love utilizing my platform, my growing platform to do better work. So last year, I don't know if you've seen, there was a film on Netflix called The Swimmers. If you have seen it, it's about two Syrian sisters who traveled from Syria to Germany. I was the producer of that film. I know, I'm a big deal, guys. I'm joking. Thank you very much. That film did really well. It was the most watched film on Netflix. People loved it. People watched it. People connected to it. Tens of millions of people watched it. They so understood. I love that everyone started Googling me right now. They're like, is this guy real? Who is this fraud? Yeah, so I did that. I also made I made a short film. So that was I started working in production. The Netflix Swimmers was my biggest job, but then I didn't want to be the producer. I wanted to become the writer. So I published my book. I wrote a book called Hope, Not Fear, which is the title of this session. And I focus on hope because hope is a great thing if it's an active hope, not a passive hope. I'm not going to just sit down and be like, hey, I hope things get better. I need to do something about it. I need to get out and do something. So I talk about how I did it. I talk about what I did. And I wrote that book. I wrote and directed a short film called Matar, which you can watch on a platform called Water Bear. It's a free platform. It's a free platform to watch films on. And then the BBC, I just signed a deal with the BBC to turn this short film into a long film. and it's about an undocumented food delivery cyclist in London. That's what the film is about. So I'm currently writing that, and I have a very, very big deadline to turn in my outline. But here I am taking a break, just to talk to you. Pleasure, of course, anytime. You can fly me to Bangkok from London anytime to talk to you. It's absolutely fine. So I'm doing that. And I want to close off by just sharing one story with you, because I've just been waffling for a very long time. But the story that I wanted to share with you is a story of, again, I like to speak with anecdotes. I think stories are cool because millions of years ago, humans, we used to communicate with stories. That's how we used to communicate. We just tell stories. So I'm going to tell you a story, and then also you do with it whatever you want. You know COVID? Remember COVID? Pretty bleak, wasn't it? Yeah, so when COVID hit, and the global pandemic sort of like destabilized the world and everything got shut down, and people panicked. People panicked. People freaked out. In England, in the UK, people were stockpiling toilet paper. They were going to supermarkets and literally buying mass loads of toilet paper. It reminded people of what actually could happen. So I was living in London, and I also was massively triggered because I thought that England was going to be safe. I left war behind me, and I'm going to be safe here. And then the pandemic breaks, and London shuts down, the whole world shut down, and I was losing my mind. There was lockdown. I can't be, for reasons that you know now very well, I'm not really good with lockdowns. So I decided to take a job in a hospital, and I took a job as a cleaner. So my job was to go into COVID wards and disinfect them. And then my parents thought I lost my mind. They said, people are staying away. Why are you going in? I said, well, I have to. It's my way of coping, to be at the heart of the crisis. So I was in this hospital disinfecting COVID wards. Now, anyone from England here? Anyone from the UK? Oh, amazing. Hi. Great. So what happened then is that the Prime Minister back then, Boris Johnson, which is a bit of a clown, a bit of a Prime Minister, his government issued something called the bereavement scheme. And to explain to you what the bereavement scheme is if you are a migrant in England and you're working on the front line to fight COVID, if you die doing that, your family gets permanent residency in England, which is the bare minimum, really. If I died, for my family to stay. It's a really good scheme. However, they decided to exclude from this scheme hospital cleaners and hospital porters. I know, it's laughable. Because if you've been to any hospital in Europe, not in Western Europe, all the hospital cleaners and porters are migrants. And they are on minimum wage. They are the people who deserve to be protected the most. So when they issued that, I lost my mind. I was like, I have to do something about this. So I did what I am very good at, is using a phone or a camera. I literally went to the parking of the hospital. I set my phone. It was exactly the same phone. I don't change phones a lot. It was this phone. And I recorded a message to the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, back then. I recorded a 2-minute message, just speaking heart to the heart. And I put it on Twitter, now called X. I know, which is now Syria, Twitter. Good old Twitter, it was good back then. I put it on Twitter, and then I closed my phone, and I go back to the shift. I finished my shift after 3 hours, and I find that I was #1 trend in England on Twitter. My video was watched by 6 million times. Everyone in the government shared it, and as a result, they announced a U-turn straight away, and they included everyone in the scheme after watching the video. Pretty epic moment. That's it. That's all I did. That's all I had to do. Also, I had access. I checked my privilege. I can use a phone. I can speak from the heart. So I did it, and it worked. And I received thousands of emails from people being like, my dad is protected because of you. My family is protected because of you. Thank you very much, and all of that. And it was great. It was a great moment. I felt like I won the lottery. It was a really good moment because genuinely I felt like, I'm glad that I can help. So, I would like to close on just saying one thing is that I hope that if one thing my story can teach you is, or like if you can take anything from my story is just the importance of really having fun. Genuinely, it's like spending quality time with family and friends. It's great because I regret not spending enough quality time with my family because I don't see them as often, sadly. And also, like, just to know that I know the world is pretty bleak right now. It's wars and conflicts and massacres and genocides, especially what's happening in Gaza right now, and children being murdered. The genocide that is unfolding in Gaza is unlike anything we've ever seen before. The conflict in Sudan, the banning women from going to school in Afghanistan, Syria, all around the world, Ukraine. There's a lot of tragedy, and I know it could sound bleak, it could look bleak. The climate, the economy, all of it. But and it could be overwhelming. It is very overwhelming. Let's just be honest about it. And you're like, is this a world I want to live in, or is this a world that I want to bring children into? A lot of people are questioning that as well. And I think just one thing is just, if you could take away something, is what can you do? You. Just what can you write? What can you say? Who can you speak to? What can you, in your work, peace building in your work, how can you do that? Taking your racist grandpa to lunch and talking to them about something that you believe in, your colleagues, your friends. What can you do in your own little community? Forget about the overwhelming world, but focus about what can you do. That's what you can focus on. Thank you very much.